Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Brandon Deason joining us. Brandon is the founder, CEO, and lead educator at DDQX Learning, medical education business operating with the mission to empower medical students to graduate with greater mental resilience, reduce financial burden, and improved clinical reasoning. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Thank you for having me, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're going to talk all about medical training, medical education today. But Brandon, before we get started, please give our listeners the elevator pitch version of your story.
Sounds good. You did a pretty good job of it right there. Touched on a lot of my favorite words. I am the CEO, founder, lead educator. That's really important to me. DDQX Learning is physician owned and operated, and it's self-funded. So I spent 11 years in the industry working for Kaplan before and after medical school and learned how it worked and built up a plan that could work on a lean infrastructure and support itself as it grew. And that has allowed me to really, instead of that ACV, that average customer value that became so pinnacle to the conversations while I was at Kaplan at higher levels, just as part of the nature of the beast. Yep. It got to go away for me when I went and started my own company. As long as my bills are paid, the only ROI I really care about is my students' success. That's the best return on investment for me.
That is wonderful. And in the spirit of full disclosure, Brandon and I did cross paths at Kaplan, and he was on the medical education side, and I was on the professional education side. So just want to make sure that that's clear for everyone. Brandon, if you had to pick one event in your life that was the accelerant for your career, what would that be?
I thought about this one, Andy, and I don't think I've rocket boosted to success just yet. For me, it's a slow and steady climb. It's about, growing at the right pace that my organization can support. And so what I really thought about for this question was the event that gave me the courage to step away from the known and into the unknown. Yeah. Which, to be honest, was the passing of my father. So my dad, Rick Deason, was an entrepreneur with a high school education. And in the nature of that Iowa Midwest spirit, he loved to give me a bad time about the fact that he had built a company with a high school education that could support us and put me through medical school. So as somebody with an MD now, I should probably be able to build a better company than he did. And so he would give me this lighthearted razzing all the time. Even, once I had finished my degree and I had gone back to work for Kaplan in the content development, content management, he would tell me that, you're never going to be able to truly follow your passions as long as your job is to make money for somebody else. And I founded my company on the 1-year anniversary of his passing for that reason. It drove it home for me once I managed the life changes that occurred from his passing through that year. And I used the remainder of that year to get myself in a better position. But it's what gave me the courage to step away from a salaried job at Kaplan and just do it, rip off the Band-Aid and make my own company and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big, we were talking before the show, just getting reacquainted, and your topic of your dad came up, and that he's also an Iowa Hawkeye fan. Yeah. For those who are watching on YouTube, I'm holding up my Iowa Hawkeye tea mug here in honor of your father. So
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Brandon, let's start the conversation with a really big sweeping question. In your opinion, what's the biggest challenge that MD and DO students face today?
Absolutely. Number one issue is what myself and other experts refer to as the medical knowledge explosion.
Mm.
So when we first started, looking back to like the 1950s and 60s, where we were publishing a good amount of medical information and research that was being done. Back then, a physician who learned medicine could expect that the amount of knowledge that was available would double in about 50 years. Fast forward to the 80s, that medical knowledge is maybe going to double in the next 5 to 10 years. In the 90s, definitely in the next 5 years. By the time I was going through medical school in the 2000s, they're telling us by the time you graduate, the information's going to be different. Nowadays, continue that extrapolation. It's estimated that the amount of medical knowledge now doubles every 73 days.
Wow.
So just extrapolating that out over a 4-year education, the amount of available knowledge is like a millionfold greater by the time you're even graduating. And so how do you become somebody who can take in the amount of new information that's continually being developed and apply it appropriately? It no longer becomes the game of memorization. You're not a doctor based on your knowledge set alone.
Right.
It has to be your ability to critically interpret new information, new research, and apply it to the setting at hand.
So agility sounds like one of the top skills that we're going to talk about later in the show. I got to imagine that a fixed mindset is just not going to get you very far in this field.
Definitely not. It requires a growth mindset. It requires acknowledging that you don't necessarily have all of the answers, but your ability to critically think through them, to recognize patterns and apply the information is going to be what AI doesn't have. Yeah. AI can pull up the data for you. It can't make the decisions appropriately. It can't see the nuances that the physician sees. And anything out there right now that can tell you, that's saying that an AI can diagnose as well as a physician, is making the diagnoses off of physician notes.
Right.
So let's be real. The AI didn't interview the patient and come up with the diagnosis. The AI read the note that was structured by the physician in such a way that it was showing how it led to that physician's diagnosis.
Right.
So AI being able to go off of our pattern recognition and make a diagnosis is not replacing us.
Yeah. So let's talk about the inputs to medical schools. Let's go into high school. And I like thought experiments. So suppose that you've got a 10th grader sitting in front of you right now, and they're pretty sure, they're not exactly sure, but they're pretty sure they want to be a doctor someday. What should they be working on right now in the 10th grade to set themselves up for success?
Great question. And so, whether it's 10th grade and just any time before you're really in college, younger in life, you think something's interesting. First off, that is about as the most extreme I want to hear. You should not definitively know what you want to do in 10th grade. And if you think you do, you're just fooling yourself. Yeah. So first thing, other than, of course, you got to, keep up your grades, keep up those kind of extracurriculars. First thing I tell them is look at everything else that's out there.
Right.
Really, there are so many other ways to help people, to make money, to have an honorable job, that whatever the facade level entry-level reason you think you want to be a doctor is. See what other careers also do that. And then if you still want to be a doctor, you know what else is out there in comparison. If and this extrapolates up all the way to our people interviewing for medical school, and they say, why do you want to be a doctor? And if you say, I want to help people, the number one follow-up is, then why aren't you becoming a nurse? Why aren't you becoming a physician assistant? Why? That doesn't tell me why physician, why doctor. So
Right.
I would say even early on, what is the seed that planted your interest in medicine? And just water it, grow it, see what it's like to really walk in our shoes. That's my number one advice, even to medical students trying to pick out their specialty. Know what the day-to-day of the job actually looks like. Not what you've heard from somebody else, not what you've read online, not what you've seen in a TV show. Shadow a doctor, see what the day-to-day of the job entails, know what the lifestyle is like, and that helps you really come to terms with if this is what you want to do.
Yeah. And let's be clear. There aren't 10th graders listening to this show. There are parents of 10th graders listening to this show. So the question behind the question is really, hey, parents, how should you be guiding a child who is really thinking about this? And if you're a parent saying, you need to go to medical school, take a step back from that maybe.
Yeah, nowadays, it is not the golden road to success, to be honest. The average medical student is now graduating with almost $300,000 in student loan debt. And that has grown exponentially over the last couple decades. I have my own opinions on this, where I feel it's almost reaching the point of indentured servitude, where we're coming out so indebted from the process that you have to take what's offered to you in terms of jobs and salaries and following the rules just to survive and get by. Versus when you graduated relatively debt-free, physicians had a lot more autonomy, a lot more bargaining power when it came to dealing with healthcare systems and the roles that they would play in them.
Yeah, our son, our eldest son, Brandon, is graduating fellow at UW Health here in Madison, Wisconsin, and I hear those kinds of stories about graduating fellows, graduating residents. That it's wow, I've got this huge student debt burden that is really guiding my decision making versus a world where there was more optionality.
Yeah. And the whole thing of it is they don't start accruing interest while you're in medical school, but they start accruing interest the moment you graduate. Right. But let's be real. Nobody is graduating with the MD ready to hit the workforce. You go into residency, and residency for 3 to 5+ years, plus being if you go for that fellowship afterwards, right? You're getting paid only like in the 50s.
Yeah.
You're making like $53,000 a year. You obviously can't pay down $400,000 in student loans. You can't even begin to touch the interest payments. I don't mind sharing a little bit about, I'm on an income-based repayment program for mine, thankfully. But if that wasn't in place, I can't even afford the interest payment. It's more than the mortgage on my house.
Right.
It's insane, Andy. It's $2,500 a month if I just wanted to cover my interest on my student loans.
Yeah. Well, this conversation could quickly devolve into student debt conversation.
Parents, be wary. Don't push your kids down this road. Let them explore. Yeah. And just let them know what they're getting into as well. It's not a golden route to like easy money. There is still like, if you're passion driven, this is what to do. And a big part of what I do now is also financial education for medical students. Know how to manage your money, know how to maximize your student loans so you don't come out in such a great debt load. And one of the working phrases I have right now is it shouldn't take an MBA to graduate from medical school and understand like your debt and student loan structure.
Yeah. Yeah. So now let's transition to, I'm going to hypothetically put a junior in college in front of you. They're in pre-med program. What's the most important thing that this individual is not thinking about, that they need to be thinking about to set themselves up for success as they transition into medical school?
Absolutely. So, a lot of students that age, that year of school, they're focused on the grades. They're focused a lot on checking the boxes. And unfortunately, it's part of the process. We feel like I've got to show you the grades. I've got to show you the MCAT. I got to show you that I can do research. I got to show you that I care about stuff. So I'm volunteering. One big thing, just side note on that, long-term consistent volunteering is the way to go. I don't care if it's an hour a month, something that you've cared about and consistently done over several years is going to do a whole lot more for you than what I heard somebody else recently call voluntourism, where you pay for that 3-week trip to Africa that's so life-altering for you because you've never seen, what it's like to not have basic privileges and blah, blah, blah. They don't want to hear about that. They want to hear about your long-term commitment to change and impact. But in regards to that student's long-term success, the biggest thing I do for early medical students is mindset adjustment, Andy. These are people who have known, for the most part, nothing but success academically, right? Your average medical student has that 3.9 to 4.0 GPA. There's somebody who goes and gets 95s on exams day in and day out for the most part.
Yep.
And the thing is, speaking from experience, I have ADD and I wasn't diagnosed until my 30s, Andy. So I made it through school as the kid not paying attention, but I got a 90 something. So who cares? They're like, oh, Brandon's asleep over there, or Brandon's not paying attention. He got a 94 on the test. Just leave him alone.
Yeah.
And that worked for me for high school. And I got through. I graduated high school at 16. I graduated from college summa cum laude at 20 in biochemistry. And I hit the wall in medical school. And I didn't have good study habits for dealing with that because I'm used to stuff coming easy for me.
Right.
And so the number one mindset adjustment is you're not stupid for when things don't start going your way. This isn't the same as what you've been used to. You're not even shooting for 90 to 95s, honestly. And I love that a lot more schools have gone to pass-fail systems rather than grades and rankings, because med students don't need that added pressure. We had a colloquial saying between us students that 70 equals MD.
Yep.
Just like, obviously it's not like we're just trying to do the minimum, but just to reassure ourselves, like, you don't have to be perfect to get through this. You have to be able to demonstrate 70% of this knowledge time and time again. And that's all it takes to pass step one as well, is 70%.
Yeah. Yeah, my mentor, Carl Swayzer, when I was in graduate school at Iowa, this what you're talking about, this mindset shift, was one of the first things that he sat me down and talked to me about. He said, look, Andy, you got to choose when you're going to apply yourself to get that 95 or 100 that you're used to, and the rest of the time you're shooting for a C plus or a B minus,
Right.
You're just, so be strategic about where you're applying your effort, because his message to me wasn't to slack. It was that you are just not going to be able to be the expert in all things in this program.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was even more true for me because I had kids during medical school. My son was actually born orientation week.
Oh,
So literally,
congratulations.
he was born on the Thursday. I missed the Friday, and I was back on Monday.
Yep.
And then my daughter was born during third year rotations. Same thing. She came on a Thursday. They let me have Friday off, and I was back on Monday. We can get into that another time about parental leave and how awful that is for medical students and providers. But the thing of it is I realized after a while I wasn't going to be a great student compared to my classmates that didn't have kids, and I wasn't going to be a great parent compared to folks who could be there all day, every day when I didn't have that possibility. And that's what I focus on with my students. I'm tutoring somebody right now for step 1 who's a parent. And I said, you're going to be a good student and you're going to be a good parent. And that needs to be enough for right now.
Yeah.
And learning to say when it's enough and finding that balancing act between those is really when you're going to be able to be happy with yourself. If you can reframe it that I'm not failing as a parent and I'm not failing as a student, but rather I'm juggling. Is it Brene Brown that has the juggling all the different balls and sizes? I use that analogy for her. I said, you're looking at a classmate who's juggling 20 things and not dropping any, and you're jealous because you're juggling 50 things and dropping 10.
Right.
I'm like, look at the fact that you still have 40 things up in the air and you're successfully juggling twice as much as they are. Yeah. And not just the fact that you have to let things drop from time to time because you have more on your plate.
Yeah. Well, let's continue to explore this after a quick commercial break. Hey everyone, I'd like to invite you to start your weekend with me on the Saturday Morning Muse podcast. I briefly explore topics that span leadership, business management, education, and personal continuous improvement. Subscribe to the Saturday Morning Muse podcast on your favorite podcast streaming app or visit andrewtemte.com for more information. And we're back with Brandon Deason talking about medical education. In the spirit of full disclosure, as I mentioned before the break, our son is in fellowship and he's completing it the week that this episode drops. So I do have secondhand experience, at least, with the trials and tribulations of medical training and education. I love that you talk about mental resilience. Before the break, you were giving advice to this individual that you're coaching. So now let's put a near end of career physician in front of you who often laments that these new graduates didn't have to suffer the way that I did in medical school and residency. They're all so soft. What's your advice to that individual to help them see the benefits of new methods of physician training and education?
Right. Well, I would say first, it would depend on how feisty I was feeling that day when he said that comment in front of me. Yeah. Because I have heard it several times and addressed it more than once. If I'm feeling particularly feisty, I'll just start with that answer. I ask how many physician suicides they're okay with and what the upper limit of that is that they're okay with. Are they fine with 5% of us, 10% of us killing ourselves? Like, I don't, because an emotional appeal isn't going to work to somebody who says you're being coddled and being like, but emotions, they're going to be like, man. I point to the data.
Yeah.
That system wasn't working. Look at the burnout statistics. Look at the fact that we're at 4 times the rate of depression and 2.4 times the rate of suicide versus the general population. This is not okay. I know somebody who committed suicide, and I would say almost every physician that I have spoken with knows a physician who has committed suicide. It is prevalent enough that we all know someone. And when the pressures of the system are that strong and that demanding, that forced a reflection from our community. Yep. And to say, what is it we're driving these people towards? And I would also say, look at the overall circumstances and environment. These aren't the same pressures that physician faced 30, 40, 50 years ago. I already alluded to the financial stresses as one of the biggest differences. These guys will talk about how they went to medical school for $1,250 a semester, how
Yeah.
they worked in the summer so they could afford to pay it. That's not possible for us. I'm taking out $80,000 a year to pay my tuition and to cover my bills while I'm going through school. There's
Right.
no chance that I can put myself through this. And so we're in a worse position financially, and that, as you know, can affect a lot of the stresses and how well you manage what's going on in your life. I was going through with a family and being financially strapped. And then you're expecting me to pull the same weight that you were doing, 30, 40 years ago when you didn't have those pressures.
And then add in what you talked about at the top of the show, which was the exponential acceleration in the quantity of stuff that somebody needs to know and
These
understand.
guys have had 30, 40, 50 years of growing their medical knowledge with this exponential increase. We're coming in as new people with, hundreds of times the amount of available information that they had to them that we're expected to grasp and understand and apply.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Brandon. Tell us about DDQX Learning. What makes your business different from the other medical education businesses that are out there? Why should prospective students choose you?
Absolutely. Nobody else does what we do, or we don't do what anybody else does. Either way you want to look at it. When I started my business, Andy, I said, for a student to have success, they need the right knowledge, the right skills, and the right attitudes. That's not me. That's learning science terminology. And I always tell students that from the beginning, because I'm like, I'm not telling you to fix your attitude. It's knowledge, skills, and attitudes. That's the terms. But the knowledge is already out there. There's tens of thousands of practice questions that have been created with explanations. There's hundreds of hours of videos where an expert has sat down and explained how this cardiac process works or how this disease works very well. I don't need to replicate what they're doing. And the number one issue I see with my students when they first come to me right now is resource overload. They already have 6 to 8 different resources at their disposal now. You grew up with Kaplan through that comprehensive prep time where we were the one-stop shop, right?
Yeah.
You came to us and we gave you the books, the question banks, the videos, the lectures, everything. That has died down over these past couple of decades to what we call the maker prep market, where students say, I want these videos, these books, this question bank. And they start accumulating all of these things that are like, oh, that's the best for this and this and this and this. But then they sit down and they go, oh, crap, I've got like 8 things in front of me and 10,000 questions and hundreds of hours of videos. What do I do now? Now what? So I've come in with 2 main strategies. The first is I have 4 stages to test prep. And this is an ebook that I'll be releasing later this year. And that will be a free one. I'm not interested in even selling it. I just want to get it out there. It'll be a cool lead magnet. But basically, it breaks down how do you deal with all this stuff? And how do you go from I'm sitting down and I have these 8 resources in front of me to being fully prepped by test day. And so I break that down into capturing core concepts. I frame it that way because you're going to go through that content and you're not going to have it memorized. So be okay with that. Go through, make sure it makes sense. Then we shift you to practice-based learning. So doing practice questions with the understanding that it's not just for assessment. You're actually using that as the learning process, which means we're not waiting until you're getting 80s or 90s on the quizzes. And in fact, when my students are doing that, I tell them to knock it off and switch subjects. I'm like, quit patting yourself on the back. We know you know reproductive systems. You're getting 90s. Go back to what you suck at. Right. And that's how we do the practice-based learning. Stage 3, you got to work on your timing. So learn to do it the right way and then do it the right way more efficiently.
Yeah.
Don't worry about timing early on because you'll just create bad heuristics. And then we work on the endurance because these exams are no joke. Step 1, 8-hour test where you're doing 7 1-hour blocks of questions. Step 2, 9-hour test where you're doing 8 1-hour blocks of questions. So we got to build up your endurance. And then lastly, stage 4, I switch it to that game mode. How do we maximize your points in that given section? Right. Not worrying about doing it correctly, question 1 through 40, but finding your 28 is what I tell students for step 1. It's a pass-fail exam now. You need to get an average of 28 out of 40 in each of those blocks. So instead of 1 through 40, I'm going to answer these right. I tell them, where are my 28? Go find them. Get those locked in. Everything else after that's bonus.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, Brandon, it's been a really enjoyable time together with you, getting to know you, your business, and talking about some of the big issues in medical education. Really appreciate the both energetic and sobering conversation. If you don't mind, I got 3 lightning round questions for you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So number 1, you've just won $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that half of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or cause. Who do you pick?
All right. So if I have 50 mil for myself, my bills are paid. I've set up my kids to be fine. I wouldn't even care about making more money as a for-profit company. So if I'm allowed this caveat, I would also give the 50 million to the other aspect of my business that I didn't get to chat with you about yet, which is student outcomes above profits, or the SOAP notion. Not that, I think I'm better equipped currently to be able to be like a good nonprofit organization, but with my lean infrastructure, I would take that 50 million and find the best ways to apply it to improve student outcomes. And I would essentially change my business model to a nonprofit and being philanthropic.
That is fantastic. Thank you for weaving the SOAP notion in there. What does SOAP notion stand for?
Yeah, so this is something I came up with a while back because in medicine, the SOAP note is a very common acronym. We use it all the time. It stands for subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. So medical people know it all the time. So instead of the SOAP note, I came up with the SOAP notion, which is essentially the idea that we should prioritize student outcomes above profits. And what I've been doing is I've been getting together a number of different startups that are mission and value driven, have put the time and effort into developing unique tools that support student outcomes in either mental resilience, their financial literacy, all kinds of, other things that test prep companies don't see the return on investment in developing because you can't turn around and sell it for hundreds of dollars each. And organizations and universities stand behind these mission-driven principles, but don't get the budgets to really invest in those tools and resources as they would like to. So what I'm doing with the SOAP notion is I'm hoping by this fall to have about 8 to 10 of us signed up and to be able to bring this set of resources and tools to universities and larger student organizations. Because each one of these people has something really cool, but hasn't been able to capture the attention of a university or an organization with their one tool alone for this one outcome. So by us bringing 8 to 10 of them together and saying, we can support all of these aspects of student outcomes, that's what I'm really hoping to be able to do with that.
Wow, very cool. So you are the first guest answering this question who essentially has your own cause all set up and ready to go. Congratulations. Second question, I give you access to a time machine. You can send a message to an earlier version of Brandon Deason. What's the message and what previous version do you send it to?
Oh, yeah. I had been given some thought to this one, Andy, and To be honest, man, I'm somebody who had to learn things the hard way. I had to run face first into the wall to be able to see it and pick myself back up and learn from it. And while it is so tempting to want to go back in time and help ourselves avoid those walls, we didn't learn how to deal with it until we hit them. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing I tell students through the admissions process as well. I love to dig in and I'm like, what's the thing that you want to gloss over? What's the thing you're embarrassed by? Let's take ownership of that now. Don't be embarrassed by it. Be proud of the fact that you're here in spite of that or despite that.
Yeah.
When other people have had smooth sailing the whole way, one of the biggest things I've found from the admission side is they want to know what happens when things don't go your way. Because that's going to happen in medical school and medicine. You're going to hit the wall. So if you haven't hit the wall up till now, I don't know how you're going to handle it when you do. And I think
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest reason I wasn't accepted right out of college. And I came back and was accepted to medical school 4 years later after being an EMT and paramedic because I had been there. I had been in psych facilities, in jails, in people's houses with folks screaming in my face and threatening me and still being like, it's part of the job. I'm good with it. I'm ready to be here still.
Nice.
And that's part of medicine is being able to take the good with the bad. And so that would be my takeaway there.
Well, you're the second guest who has said, nope, I wouldn't send a message back. So that's cool. The last question, we're all works in progress. What are you focused on right now in your journey of growth?
Practicing what I preach. I already know the right answers to so much of how to improve my own life and how I feel day to day. And a lot, especially as I'm working towards the SOAP notion, which talks about the whole body and taking care of not only your mind, but eating well and exercising. I'm not going to lie. I just have the naturally skinny body where I look like I take care of myself, but I don't have to take care of myself to look like this. It's a nice benefit for me. But what I'm already finding is I created a very easy checklist for myself to begin with, which I'm going to pull over here, which was just going back to the basics. I feel so tired. Why? Have I drunk water? Have I eaten a balanced meal? Have I gone in the sunlight? Have I stretched? Have I done any cardio? Have I done any mental exercises today? And when I just start reminding myself of the basics of how to take care of myself, how to feel better, I feel better. And so practicing what I preach is going to help me to demonstrate to students this really does work. You don't have to feel strung out. You don't have to be slamming energy drink after energy drink to try and study 20 hours a day. If you actually let yourself go to sleep at a regular time, sleep, wake up and eat a balanced breakfast and drink water, you'll actually feel better. It's crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brandon, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Lots of great information, especially for those parents of students who are in the process. If you're listening to this, please pass this interview off to that student who's
Can I just
going
give
through.
one more plug?
Sure.
I reread the intro to your book 2 nights ago just to refresh, and same thing. You said, unbalanced success is often worse than balanced failure, and I couldn't agree more. Like, there were times in the past where I succeeded by doubling down on terrible habits, and I got through medical school and some of the worst experiences of being a paramedic by shutting off emotional responses and blunting it with dark humor versus embracing what was happening. And so this part of my life now feels the most balanced I've ever been, where I allow myself to end a day's work at a normal time and not think about all of the things I could still do, but say, no, I did a good job. I did a good day's work today. So I get to disengage and enjoy time with my partner and enjoy time with my kids, and not just think about the other emails I could be sending or content I could be producing. We're not machines. The answer isn't always doing more is better. Treat yourself like a whole human. Treat yourself the way you would tell other people to treat themselves, and you'll be a lot happier for it.
Thank you for that, Brandon. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Andy.
All right. Well, my name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please share this public good with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, and your family. Give it a like, subscribe, and give us a rating as well. That really helps out. So, the show was produced by Nicholas Temte. We'll see you next time on The Balancing Act.